This is Test Case Scenario with me, your host, Jason Baum. This podcast is the definitive hub for knowledge and stories in the software testing and development communities. If you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button and let's dive straight into the episode. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Test Case Scenario. I'm your host, Jason Baum, along with my co-host, Evelyn Coleman and Marcus Merrill. And joining us today, we have a very special guest, Scott McAllister from ngrok. Scott, thanks so much for coming on today.
Jason, thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like to introduce you by saying hello so that you're not just standing there and people are wondering who you are. And then I will say your bio.
Awesome.
Lessons learned. So Scott is from ngrok. He's a developer advocate who's dedicated over a decade to building software across various industries. Now he focuses on educating others about web tech and incident management principles. Beyond professional life, he enjoys spending quality time outdoors with his family, whether it's taking long walks with his wife or skipping rocks with the kids. I absolutely love that part and wanted to make sure I included it. So Scott, thank you so much for joining.
Awesome. It's good to be here.
Cool. So we are going to talk about a bunch of stuff today. We kind of said we wanted to, Scott's really cool. He wants to be game for down for anything kind of conversation. And those of you who are longtime listeners of us for our, first 32, 33 episodes, I can't remember the number anymore. Probably know us by now as we're going to have fun. So let's do it, Scott. I think that's awesome. Starting off, maybe you could tell us a little bit about what is ngrok?
Well, the official title on our website says we're a unified ingress platform. What that essentially means is we are a tool that allows you to provide access to a service or application or another network easily and securely. And so the idea there is that, when we're trying to set up connections of our applications, getting things online and whatnot, it requires a certain level of expertise that sometimes we may or may not have or just may or may not want to deal with. And so we can be that piece of your infrastructure that allows you to focus on you. You focus on what makes your application or your service unique, and then we'll be that piece that gets things online in an efficient way, in a secure way, and then we are that partner that you can have to have that connectivity easy.
Is there an easy example you can give? Like I'm working on a software project, e-commerce or banking or something like that, and it's not released yet. We're early on. How do I use ngrok? What's it give me?
Yeah. So the initial use case that we were created for, right? Our founder, Alan Shreve, needed to test code that was running on his local machine. And so he was trying to test webhooks essentially. And so he needed to be able to, expose the code on his local machine. So if you were in your situation where you were writing an application, like you said, not quite ready to go into production, but you need it to test it. You need to have your team test it. You need to share it with your team or maybe share it with a closed circuit of customers or users. You could use ngrok to essentially have your application running on, say, port 4000 on your machine. And then you tell ngrok to say, all right, serve this thing up on HTTP, point it to port 4000, and then it gives you a URL. So then all the traffic going to that URL gets routed to your application running on your machine. Now, that kind of sounds scary, right? Because it's like opening up the barn doors, or at least opening up a hole in, you might think it's opening up a hole in your machine or the access to your box. And so there's definitely some security things you can take into consideration. OAuth is included with ngrok, so you could put just like an OAuth layer right there to basically say, all right, we want to route traffic to this URL, but it's going to also use OAuth from, say, Google, and we're only going to allow these email addresses to pass through so that they can only those email addresses have that access to that application. So we want to make sure that not only are you getting things online quickly and easily, but you're also doing it in a way that isn't going to jeopardize your machine.
I want to be sensitive to the fact that you at no point said VPN, but this reminds me a lot of a VPN. And I can guess at how it's different, but I would rather hear it from you.
Right. So with ngrok, you're essentially taking your traffic and you're telling it to pass either over HTTP, you can also say TCP, and make that so that it's passing on to a specific port. And then we handle that ingress so that when all the traffic goes to that URL that ngrok returns, it will essentially pass through our platform. Essentially. So it's very similar to a VPN, but except with a VPN, you're installing things on your machine to like big clients and things. ngrok is just a client that runs in your terminal, and then you can have it super lightweight that provides that access into your machine.
I was gonna say, so if I can like echo that back a little bit, it's like the way I'm thinking of it is like a bespoke VPN with hyper configured, it's just like tailored for one particular device or use or landing point, as opposed to a VPN, which I think essentially takes over all the network traffic from one source to another. It's like a little tunnel through the network to a particular thing. And you can layer these things or stack these things and have several of them so that there's multiples of them running with different kinds of access controls and stuff like that. It's just like a platform that provides dozens of VPNs or however many you need, something like that. I keep saying VPN, but that's not quite right. Tunnels.
Well, but you're essentially describing it in a way that like takes what you already know and then trying to apply what you know to this new thing, right? And so it's kind of like you could do that with each different connection. So you can have that flexibility to have each connection be its own set of configurations. It's interesting. There's a user that is a restaurant chain, and they needed to be able to get access to their point of sale systems in all their different stores across the country. And mainly this was for a situation where they have like the online ordering. So like a Grubhub or a DoorDash type thing. Before they had ngrok, they basically, whenever like a DoorDash order came in, it had no way of getting to the point of sale system. So it would just email the store. I worked fast food when I was at one point in my life. You're not watching email, right? You're worried about getting the next thing on the screen made and pushed through. And so with ngrok, they're able to actually provide that ingress to their point of sale system. So now that these services like DoorDash can say, all right, I have a destination. I can post this order to this URL, and then it gets put directly into the point of sale system. And then it's right there with the rest of the orders. And so you're able to make those orders as the restaurant employee. So it's a lot nicer for them.
I have an important follow-up question to that. What restaurant chain was this?
I'm not sure I'm allowed to say. Right? And so it's
oh, you can say we say names all the time. No, it's
right. It's they serve coffee.
Oh,
so okay. I'll just say that that's broad enough.
It's really cool. It sounds like almost like this mesh peer-to-peer network. That's probably not even a right description, but what's interesting to me is that it opens the door to, I'm not necessarily using this solely for testing, which is what I had thought. Now this is just how I make my platform work in the world.
Yeah.
Which is great. It's really cool.
Yeah. There's other situations too. You're getting me thinking of all the different scenarios, right? So Databricks actually uses us for each of their customers because their customers have their data sitting on their own networks, their own infrastructure. And then Databricks has their service that's running outside of that infrastructure. So they need to get access into that customer's data. And so they use ngrok to say, here, we'll set up ngrok. It provides a connection between our service and the customer. And that's easy. And so it's able to save them, what they say, like months of like getting things set up and trying to get a connection to things and getting all the right approvals. Now they just use ngrok to do that.
That's awesome. You do a very good job of explaining it. In fact, for the audience who is not here the pre-show when we were talking about me not having a clue what this was, once I read that it was a reverse proxy, I suddenly completely understood what it was and was like, oh. And then so when you heard Marcus being like, I think Evelyn had questions, I'm between reading that and hearing Scott's amazing rendition of what this is, I actually feel like I have a very solid understanding of it. And I think I could also think of some use cases if I was pressed
Thank
to.
you.
So well done, Scott. And well done, Google.
So to that end, I guess my question would be, we work for a testing company that offers a tunnel. And I guess I'm wondering, is there any sort of an inherent performance impact to this, what initially seems like a series of extra hops, but might actually reduce the number of hops? What is the added network traffic or performance hit, if any, of using this? Do you see any?
I mean, the network traffic is passed through us, like you're saying, and like I was explaining before. And so there is definitely some traffic that goes there, but our agent that you would use is trying to find the closest point of, what do they call that, point of presence. So that way, when you're routing that traffic, it's making it as fast as possible. And then also, we're load balancing that traffic as well. So we can handle taking that, and you're essentially relying on our load balancers. And that way, it's helping with the traffic there. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely going to be a little bit of traffic. I think that a touch of latency there. I don't know the actual numbers there, though.
So we like to talk about this, is completely unrelated. I'm kind of shifting gears a little bit. I like to do this. We're going to just shift gears abruptly. We like to talk about sometimes errors, or in some cases bugs that we can find. And I always like to ask, like, what was the most outrageous one you ever found? Now, since you're not necessarily a tester, but you have tested as an engineer, what is kind of the biggest coding blunder or something that you have encountered in your career as a software engineer?
I mean, there were so many. The common ones, right, are the bugs that took you like all day or like days. And then you're just pouring over. It's like, okay, I'll look over it one more time, but I know this is doing exactly it. And you're walking through it, and then you go, no way. And you like change one thing. You like flip an operator, or you flip a something, and it's just like, that was it. That was all. It was just one little line. Thanks. And then 2 days of stress, and bringing systems down is always fun. So
I feel like the first one is much more common, by the way. I feel like everybody had that one. The bringing all the systems down.
Yes, tell us, Scott.
Yeah.
Tell us about when you crashed.
Did you hit the red button, Scott? You hit the red button, didn't you?
We're going to bring up this story. So this actually applies to my wife, because we moved to Seattle. This is years ago. And my first job here in Seattle, and I want to impress. I've been there like a month. And I decided, hey, I'm going to push some changes on her birthday, because I'm ready and this code's ready and I'm going to do it. And I push these changes, and it brings my whole section of the application down, like completely toast. I was over the custom reporting of this particular application. All the custom reports were down. I start stressing a little bit, and I'm like trying to get this thing to get back up, and I'm new and I'm trying to learn all the systems. And my wife ends up spending her birthday eating dinner by herself downstairs instead of celebrating her birthday in a new town where she knows nobody. Yeah, I did not win Husband of the Year award that year. No, not so much. So now we make the joke, no pushing code on your birthday.
That's good rule.
But did you have like a sweet note? Like, did you name your commit something like happy birthday, wifey? And so that's like forever committed in the, yes, of course.
So that was good.
How'd you make it up to her?
She gives me a hard time about it most every year.
Yeah. So still living that one.
Yeah. So I mean, and it's fair. It's like pushing code on a Friday, right? Like, probably shouldn't, but we all do.
Yeah. We did a survey recently of developers, and like 61% of them admitted to pushing untested code to production. However, 23% of those people admitted to having pushed untested code to production that was generated by Chat GPT.
Oh.
Scott, have you ever done that?
No, I have not.
Doesn't that roughly equate to about 12%?
I'm not pushing production code anymore. So Chat GPT kind of came into the world after I was pushing production code. So I've never had that. So as a developer advocate, we write samples, essentially, like we write a thing to teach it a topic. And on my last set of samples, I decided, all right, let's try out this Chat GPT thing. And so I'm like sitting there trying to get it to write a program. And to be honest, it's not bad, but you still have to know what's going on. Like, yeah, I could I could cobble something together, but since I already knew JavaScript, I already knew Node, I already had an idea of how React should work, it would get me about 80% of the way there. And then I'd have to, still do some debugging in there. And so you still got to know what's going on.
Yeah.
But it does help with the debugging as well, right? So I was doing some coding with ChatGPT a few weeks ago, and like you said, you have to know just enough to kind of get it started, know what you're asking for, take a look at it, and be like, no, I need it to adjust a few things. And then I ran into an error that I did not understand, and I kind of just circled back and was like, "But ChatGPT,
you gave it to me."
So we're trying, yeah, you don't have to leave. You don't have to go to the other like websites and things. You can just circle back. And if it works, it fixed it. So maybe it wasn't like the best fix. I think it just realized I was like an older version of my IDE or something. And it just adjusted the code to be a little bit older, which is not the right answer, right? Like I really should have upgraded.
You just brought up something that I've been actually thinking about, because what you just said, I didn't have to go anywhere. You didn't have to go on to someone's forum. You didn't have to go to Reddit. You didn't have to go to Stack Overflow. Look, everybody goes Stack. Like, what was it? 90% of the time, probably before, you probably would have went to like Stack Overflow for the answer, right?
Yeah.
Now we use Chat GPT to do that because it's almost certainly going to Stack Overflow. And it just does that for me. And I don't have to deal with the toxicity and the BS.
Okay. So has anyone done any research lately as to Stack Overflow's numbers? Like, have people like dramatically dropped off of using Stack Overflow? And this is not a knock against that. I like Stack Overflow for what it is. And I know people over there I hope you stay in business for a long time, and what you're doing is great. But at the same time, their use case was, I have this problem in my code. I need to fix it. Ask in Stack Overflow. Well, now we got Copilot, we got GPT, we got all the Bard, we got.
Have you heard of cursor.sh?
I have not heard of that.
It's an IDE that has that stuff baked in. I
Built
haven't
in.
tried it yet,
Yeah.
but I've heard it's pretty amazing.
I think it started as a remote interviewing platform for like technical job interviews, and then it kind of evolved from there. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Wow.
I think that's right.
So I don't know about Stack Overflow and how that's doing with the invention of ChatGPT, but as a lifelong student, I know that some of the websites where people get answers to their homework are struggling a bit because of the AI answers, because there's these websites where people can post their homework questions and then people will come and write an answer, and those people get paid. I don't know if it's by the answer or by how well their answers are rated. Because they always say, give me a plus at the bottom. So I'm assuming they get paid extra by how they're rated. And those websites are inundated with AI answers now, to the point where, as a student, where you're trying to learn and see if you got it right and you're looking, it's hit or miss. I preferred when there was like a human being answering the questions, but did I get the answers?
Yeah,
Yes.
unfortunately, the answers were trained on the work that people got paid to do, which they are now not getting paid to do. So
Scott, I'm curious, because as a developer advocate, someone who spent their life in engineering, making that transition to now you're teaching. Evelyn kind of brought up how great you were at kind of taking a complex, what would seem to be pretty complex, and then simplifying it, right? That's basically your role. If I had to type out your role, how do you make that career transition? Why did you make that career transition? And, how do you like it compared to being a software engineer?
Well, to answer them in reverse order, I love it. It's exactly what, if I could have like pieced together my perfect job opportunity, like developer advocate for me is like it, because I still get to be involved in technology. I still get to build stuff, kinda, right? Like building cool little apps and samples and things. But then I love teaching. I discovered later on in life that I like getting in front of people and I like speaking. At some point in a previous life, I was a writer. And so I get to do a lot of that too. And so having the variety of things is what gets me excited about being a developer advocate. But at the end of the day, I tell people what I love about developer advocacy and developer relations is I feel like we're teachers. We're there to teach topics. Yeah, we're there to teach a product too, but really it's topics on how to help people be better at their jobs and be better at being a better developer. And then also incorporating what your company, whoever you're representing, can do to help them be that better developer. So the transition's a funny story. I was a software engineer at a company called Smartsheet. Across the cue ball from me was this guy who would leave all the time. And he would be gone and he'd come back and I'd be like, Ted, where were you? He's like, oh, I was at this conference in like Portugal, and then this conference in like Atlanta, and this conference in, wherever. And I was like, we pay you to go to conferences? He's like, oh yeah, I go speak, I give talks, and it's called developer relations. And I was like, this is what I want to do. This is exactly what I want to do.
Yeah, I often say about the role, people are usually like, you get paid for that? When I tell them what it is that we do.
Yeah. I honestly, I love it. If I can keep doing it, I'll keep doing it. It's a lot of fun.
It's hard though. It is a lot of hard work, not to make light of it, but it's fun. I always thought this is the most fun role you could possibly have, in my opinion, in any place. Being able to get paid to go talk about something you love and showcase it. I mean, there's nothing better than that, right?
And the funny thing about the hard stuff, right? As a software engineer, you had a pretty good idea of what success looked like, right? As a software engineer, I was like, I need to build a thing, and that thing needs to work, and that thing needs to get out to my customers, or it needs to be faster, or you have these things to measure that you can get out to the world. You have a physical product. In developer relations, it's not quite as cut and dry, right? You have to make people feel better about your product. I'm like, well, okay, how do you do that? And so finding those ways to help people feel better about your product, but also feel better as a software engineer is the trick. And then also, you're working for a company, right? You need to provide value to that company. And so you need to find ways to build up the product that you're working on or that you're representing. It's all part of the plan or the game, I guess you could say. I feel like we're always constantly learning something new as a dev advocate.
Yeah, totally. I use this line a lot when it's reversed and I'm being asked about DevRel. Is something that stood out to me from a talk that I heard once. It was its title, actually. Not the talk itself, although the talk was great, but the title resonated more than anything. And it was talking about proving the worth of your DevRel program. And it was, how do you prove the ROI of your mother? And I was like, nothing has captured it more perfect than that one statement or question.
However, you still need to, right?
Yeah,
Like,
but you still need to.
as
Yeah,
a dev
someone's gonna make
advocate,
you.
it's like you still need to find ways to associate yourself with value. I think as you go out, as you teach, as you make people feel excited about a particular topic, and then have that topic is associated with that company or the product that you're representing, it's like that's the fun part, and that's the part where you have your users that get excited, you have your company that gets excited, then you're excited. So it's like it's a win-win.
Yeah, I mean, Marcus, Evelyn, you're both teachers. I mean, we're all kind of teachers on this podcast in a way, I feel
Yeah.
like.
I was going to ask though, like, since you're, going out to these conferences and things and talking about it, do you have like a favorite, like if I said, come to my conference tomorrow, can you send me your favorite like talk track? What's the one that you would send? If it's like an open invitation, what's your favorite thing to just go on about?
I don't have a solid single topic that I go on because it's whatever needs to be talked about at the time. So like when I was at PagerDuty, I was as a PagerDuty before ngrok, I kind of fell in with the Terraform crowd, right? And infrastructure as code. And I could talk about that all day long. And then when I shifted roles and came over here to ngrok, it's like, well, we don't need to talk about that so much right now. What we need to talk about is things that deal with ingress. And so it's like Kubernetes is a thing that I'm trying to learn about, but also talk about. So that's tricky, right? You're supposed to be the one getting up in front of a group talking about a topic, but you also need to know about the topic. And so you got to dig into it. And so real popular topic right now that I'm talking about is webhook testing, honestly, or webhook verification. And so that's a big thing that a lot of conferences are taking right now.
That's a cool subject. That's great stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because like everybody's using webhooks. I mean, pretty much. If your application's updating information from somewhere else, everybody's using them. So,
can you talk about the difference between push and pull in that sense? I don't know if our listeners are going to have an automatic understanding of what you mean by webhook as opposed to a traditional API.
Yeah, so a traditional API is like you make a request to a server and you're saying, "Hey, give me this information," and then they're going to send it back to you. In a webhook situation, it's more like, "Hey, I just want to know when updates are happening. So can I just like subscribe? And then you tell me that whenever there's something new, post it back to me and I'll give you an address and this is where you want to send it."
It's like an RSS feed.
More in active in a sense. So like if you have an application where you want to update, like I always come to sports scores because in my head, that's the thing that updates in real time all the time, or stock prices or something like that. If I want to post those sports scores, it's going to send a webhook to me to say, this score has changed. This has, these events have happened. And so that's what webhooks will do in like business sense, right? Your PR requests or something like that, or a deposit was made on a particular account, that type of thing.
Yeah, it's like event handling. I mean, at saucelabs, the example would be, I'm going to kick off a series of tests. And then every half a minute, I'm going to say, are they done yet? No. Are they done yet? No. Are they done yet? No. This way, I could just say, you know what? I'm going to open up an endpoint. You tell me when they're done,
Exactly.
and I'll act on it. We actually have webhooks at saucelabs as well.
Oh, cool.
No, I like that method a lot better. I'm sold. Give me some webhooks right now. I'll send you my address, Scott, and you can just deliver them if you'd like. Send me some free swag of some webhooks. Yeah, no, I'm sold. This is nice. I would rather do that.
Yeah, polling is really resource heavy and cumbersome when you're just sitting there saying, are you done yet? Are you done yet?
Yep, that's like my daughter. My daughter's doing the polls. She's just hitting me constantly. Are you done yet? Are you done yet?
Have you tried asking her if she'd like to subscribe to updates?
Maybe.
I think Jason's.
There's a
that's
baby book, like webhooks for children, and then you could just like read it to her at bedtime.
We have that book for testing, don't we?
We have a children's book. We have the Dr. Seuss book. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got a copy at home. We should make a sequel to it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Let's talk about another topic.
Let's talk about the Vision Pro.
Yeah.
All
I'm
right.
so going into it.
Vision
I
Pro.
can't stop. We're going to talk about it. So
It's
the
so
Vision-
cool.
It's definitely something. So it came out. We had our live episode back on February 1st. It kicked off our new season, actually. We talked to Matt Clark. He's a video game developer. He also happens to be a solutions engineer here at saucelabs. And we talked, a lot about pretty much the entire episode about the Vision Pro. And we pontificated. Well, we just flat out guessed what it was going to be. We guessed about like the impact. We guessed what are developers going to make anything for this thing? Like what's going to happen? And we have found out so much about it in such a short period of time. Now I'm going to give away a secret to our audience.
I thought you were about to say you were going to give away
Yeah, we're going to give you a Vision Pro.
I'll take one.
Share this episode and get a Vision Pro. Just kidding. But I'll send you a bottle of hot sauce if you'd like. Hit me up.
You were going to tell us a secret.
Yeah. Oh, the secret for the audience. The secret for the audience is we record this show. This show's recorded and we play it at a later date. So here's the thing. That live episode I just mentioned, that happened last week. That's important for me to say because I kind of want to talk about what happened in the past week since it launched. Since it launched, there's been a ton of buzz about this on social media. And basically, it's people posting threads on X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it, with all like people wearing them on like the subway or riding in the Cybertruck, which we do not condone, or other uses of
flying airplanes.
Yeah, what else have you seen?
Yeah, I saw the flying airplane one. I was a little concerned about that one.
Oh, they're just walking around the streets of Manhattan with the battery pack and just as they cross the street.
Ugh.
I would not advise it.
So, I mean,
Scott, what do you think?
If someone has that on and they're crossing the street of a busy intersection and they get hit by a car, hypothetically, whose fault is that? Right?
The driver's wearing the Vision Pro too. So
that's fair. Yeah, they're all wearing them.
And then the police officer comes, first responder. He's got the Vision Pro on to record the scene. Everybody's got.
They're all in autonomous vehicles.
Yes.
You excuse my ignorance because I'm just looking at this for the first time. I don't have an Apple infrastructure at home, so I'm the person who's coming in with a fresh perspective. I'm looking. I typed in Vision Pro. I'm looking at images. Where does this cord go?
It goes to your back pocket where there's a battery pack that you could just slip into your.
I didn't know that.
I think there might be a belt clip.
Does it come with a clip? Do I have to buy a bunch of it doesn't look, that's very slick. It doesn't look like it has a clip.
If they charge extra for the clip, it's $200. Like the wheel on the Mac, the Mac Pro, the wheels are like $800.
Yeah.
Just the wheels on the computer.
And it's a clip that only works with the Vision Pro. You can't use that clip for any other clipping needs.
Of course not.
It looks cool, very futuristic. It looks like kind of like any of the other sort of VR things except you see through it. It's like a monitor for. I'm looking at this.
You don't actually see through it.
Like, I'm not doing Photoshop edits. I'm like, oh, I guess I could watch a movie while I'm on the subway. Like, I'm a very simple person, and I'm looking at this. I'm like, I guess I could wear it and have a monitor that I can see through while I'm walking, but I don't see myself like making and engineering a thing like an app that works specifically with Vision Pro. And I'm sure someday will come up with some really cool stuff, but for now I'm like, it'll tell me which way to walk to get to the subway. Am I understanding this correctly? I feel like I'm minimizing.
I think you're saying all the same things that we talked about on the episode last week.
I think you're slashing a dose of reality on, right?
$3,500.
Yeah.
Okay. I just thought maybe I wasn't seeing
No, I think most of
because y'all both said, Marcus and Jason were like, this thing is so cool. And I'm looking at it. It's cooler than just wearing my face by itself. Like, it is definitely a +1 cool to my face. But that cool, the reaction y'all gave me the impression it was going to be.
Well, there's been some new stuff come out about it since we recorded the video, so I'm more excited about it. However, that stuff is not. It's not going to make me go out and buy one. Like, I'm going to wait for the 4th revision or 5th. That, like, a lot of the problems that they talk about with the platform are going to be solvable, but just not yet. They haven't solved them yet. So I'm not paying $3,500. I might pay $1,200 if this for this possibly. I don't even know if I paid that much. But
Mr. Cook, if you're listening, Marcus will purchase it for $1,200 if you want to make that pricing update. Yeah,
I still write checks.
Is there a subscription?
I don't think so.
That you have to pay day to day as well? Like, on
really? I assumed there was.
Not that I'm aware of, anyway.
Not at this point.
Well, see, you think that you have to pay $3,500 and then a subscription on top of that?
Pay for some sort of iCloud thing.
I feel like somebody would have mentioned
my dog's collar has a subscription. I am 100% sure.
Well, let's get into that now.
Vision Pro has...
Why are you paying a subscription for your dog's collar? Yeah, I know.
Scott, LG.
Well, so Scott, what have you seen and what do you think so far of the Vision Pro?
I honestly haven't dug into it as much either. And so I'm an Android guy. And so it's like, I like what Apple's doing. I like how they're pushing the envelope as far as getting things forward. But when it comes to their periphery devices, like, the Vision Pro, I'm kind of sitting back watching, trying to understand, how is this furthering things? I mean, I know it. I'm sure it is, to be honest. I'm sure it's furthering the technology and the understanding of how to do augmented reality. I think augmented reality is going to be super, super cool. But like you guys have been saying, I think V1 is not something I'm going to jump on just yet.
So I have seen someone using it. There's like this app, I guess. And a lot of these apps are made by Apple, by the way. They're like preloaded. I don't know specifically if the ones that I'm mentioning are, but I know for a fact that like some of these are preloaded. There's one for like if you're vacuuming, that gives you like little tennis balls in AR. And they're very big on saying that it's not AR. It's, what was it? Spatial computing.
Spatial computing.
Yeah, spatial computing. Because Apple has to be it's theirs.
I think I figured out how they're able to push this silly narrative. And that is that you aren't actually looking at the actual reality of the actual place in front of you. You're looking at what the cameras are reproducing in screens on your eyes. So you're not actually looking at it. It's not actually augmenting any kind of reality. It is recreating reality.
Wow.
Which is pretty cool if you think about it.
It's pretty dope.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Pretty dope.
Okay, but my vacuum has a laser on it that shows you all the dirt. And it's the actual dirt that is on the actual floor. It's not just guessing whether or not I vacuumed that spot.
Do you have a subscription for this vacuum?
Okay. I'm surprised, but no, I don't. But I guess what I'm saying is like, comes up in a lot of technology where like, and I think Marcus has kind of mentioned this, is it actually helping or is it giving you like this facade of helping? Because I would rather know that my floor is clean rather than have an app guess if my floor is clean.
I can already hear my kids telling me, the tennis balls told me it was clean, Dad.
No, I mean, it picks up all the tennis balls.
Right. It's like, sorry, that spot right there, that's not clean.
we got into this a little bit last week of there's a difference between, I don't think that's ever going to happen, or versus it's going to happen and I don't want any part of it. Like, I think those can both be true.
Yeah, I wasn't prepared for the amount of people. I guess it's not a lot of people, but for all the videos of people that I have seen wearing them out in public, I was surprised. I'm surprised so many are in their day to day doing that. Like the guy in the subway, just like, clearly watching a movie and then doing work like on the subway. It's weird. The guy walking across the street, just moving things along. It adds a whole new level of distraction, by the way, because people were concerned when people were just doing this walking down the street. Now, could you imagine this walking down the
How
street?
do you want your dopamine?
And God forbid you get a pop-up while you're trying to cross the street, right? Like we talked about crossing the street earlier, but there's one thing if you've decided to distract yourself. It's another thing entirely if you forgot to hit no notifications or something. Like I struggle managing notifications right now. I don't know. I guess I think with this version 3, version 4 business that y'all are talking about, to me, it's not necessarily I want to wait because I'm waiting for the apps to get better. Or I'm waiting for people to go through some of the issues. For me, it's that I feel like the rest of technology has caught up to try and solve some of the same problems already. And that technology is pretty good, right? Like my vacuum analogy, my other vacuum tells me exactly where it's been. It has like a LiDAR on it. It knows where it's been. So once the Vision Pro does something that technology hasn't caught up with, like once it's doing something that I don't have a solution for, at that point, I think I'd be more interested. But we've been spending so much time coming up with clever solves for these things already. We're almost just like the Vision Pro is almost just like at parity or almost at parity with the solutions we already have. Like I need it to be here before I can invest.
I feel like it's kind of similar to how Apple does a lot of things, which is they'll take what's already out there and just make it a little bit better in how it's presented and its form factor and all that stuff. And they'll charge a premium for it and they'll make it sexy and cool. I think this is kind of there. Like we had Blackberries, we had these distraction machines. Apple finished it. And then we actually made it a part of our lives. That might be what's going on here.
Yeah. Oh, it's fascinating. I can't wait to revisit this topic again. As it evolves, I mean, I was such a detractor on the Apple Watch when it first came out. I was like, what's the point? I got a phone. Oh, okay. Yeah. And then you go back to like when the iPhone came out and that clip of Regis Philbin, like, who's going to use that? Like, okay. And then where we are to an iPod and a phone. Well, why would I need both? I got both.
Has anyone looked into the development experience of like building apps for the Vision Pro?
We are starting to look at it for purposes of like talking about it. Yeah. Because the developer kit is out. You can get it if you have an Apple ID and you have, I guess, a good enough reason.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I would look into it right now. I don't know if it's worth my time. They said they only shipped like 76,000 units or something. Like, and he's like, if I'm looking at that, I'm saying I'm not going to waste my time developing for that right now. Like, come back when you're shipping more and we can have the conversation. And, this is neither a slight against Apple or anything. I'm a huge Apple fan, but I see his point. Like, I guess it really is a volume game and where you want to spend your time. And he's just like, I'm not doing it.
No, but if you get it right, though, right? That's the enticement for the developer is that like, if you're the one who gets it right, who comes up with the first like really useful thing that everyone really like, the thing that makes Apple Vision Pro something worth buying, you're the next Mark Zuckerberg, like at that point, right? Like you can, and so I think there's a lot of people out there who don't want to play the volume game. They want to imagine themselves as like the one, and that person is probably like alive and writing code right now. Maybe they've even crashed the platform on their wife's birthday right now. They're like out that guy, that person.
You never know, right? Like, you want to be on the front of that wave. It's like, is this the wave to take? Going into that surfing analogy of just like, is this that wave?
I don't know. Well, we'll find out more. Well, Scott, thank you for being game to talk about anything. That was cool. This was our most ad hoc, like all over the place episode, and I had a lot of fun doing it. I hope you did too.
This is great. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it, and would love to come back anytime.
Great. I appreciate it. And the company is ngrok, and you could look them up for more information. Scott, I don't know if there's anything you want to plug.
Yeah, you can go to ngrok.com and sign up for a free account today.
Sweet. All right. Go ahead and do that. And thank you so much for watching another episode of Test Case Scenario. If this was your first one, I hope you go back and watch a few others that have all different conversations. Not all of them are hitting all these different notes. We do dive into certain topics, but we always have fun, but not nearly as much fun as we just had with Scott. So hope you had as much fun as we did. And we hope to see you on another episode of Test Case Scenario. Thank you for joining us on Test Case Scenario. Share your thoughts in the comments. We'll make sure to respond to each and every single one. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell to keep in touch. If you missed our last episode, it's popping up on your screen right now. Go, click it. Until next time on Test Case Scenario.